So this is a video response to Northridgefix's video where he said schools are useless, and in the way that they teach, of course. And I wanted to emphasize that for my own life and just how it resonated with me. And I couldn't agree with you more, Alex. So right now I am, as of this video, I am 26. I was in public school from preschool to 3rd grade, and 4th grade to 9th grade I was homeschooled. 10th grade a private Christian school, and 11th and 12th I was in public school. Now, one thing that I want to say about the way that the education system works is learning information about a topic that, when it gets tested and applied in real life, in my experience, there isn't many situations where that actually makes sense or matters at all. So what I want to say is that when I was homeschooled, I had a lot more freedom to kind of experiment and find out what I liked. And when I found out what I liked, I could learn about it as much as I wanted to, and I could literally just dive deep into it. So probably when I was about 13, I got into small engine repair, weed whackers, chainsaws, leaf blowers, etc. And I wanted to understand how it worked. I wanted to understand how the carburetor worked. I wanted to understand how the compression stroke worked, and everything about an engine. I wanted to understand the concept of it. And so I dove deep into it, and I had this obsession with putting an engine on a bicycle or a scooter and making a motorized bike or scooter, because I just had this idea, if I could just make a motorized bike, then I would never have to pedal anywhere anymore, and I just loved that idea. So for the longest time, that's what I got into. I got into that. Then I got an iPod Touch, and I heard this term called jailbreaking, and I didn't know what it was. And at the time, it was an iPod Touch 2nd gen on iOS 4.2.1, and the jailbreak was called Green Poison. And it's an untethered jailbreak. But anyways, it got me into understanding the jailbreak process and understanding, like, moving towards understanding how exploits worked, how the jailbreak actually worked, how everything is ran basically in a sandbox, and a jailbreak is essentially unsandboxing yourself. So if you can imagine a sandbox, everything is ran inside the sandbox, and you can unsandbox yourself so you can run other things, right? That sandbox is like permissions, and you can get outside of those permissions, so you can do things without asking for permission first, if that makes sense. This is essentially what jailbreaking is. Well, I learned that, and I became obsessed with the idea of being able to do things and manipulate the software in different ways, even if I was just installing jailbreak tweaks or whatever I was doing. So I got into iPod Touch jailbreaking, and then I got into game console jailbreaking, and I loved the idea of installing a mod chip or downgrading the software version on the PS3 to 3.55, installing custom firmware, and installing the GeoHot jailbreaker or whatever. And I grew in intensity of trying to find a PS3 that I could mod. I got some Yellow Light of Death PS3s that were dead, and I never actually got them working, but there's a story beyond that. I got myself a backwards compatible PS3. I traded for my PS3 Slim for this guy's backwards compatible PS3. When I got home, I didn't realize, and I didn't check the HDMI connector. The HDMI connector was destroyed on this PS3 board. This would have been probably midway through 2012 at the time. So I knew that I couldn't do the repair with a soldering iron because there's more than 19 connections there on the board, and it's a through-hole part. So I had this idea of using a heat gun we had in the garage to desolder the port and desolder my old one and put the new port in. So I called my dad and I asked him, because my dad doesn't have a hot air station offhand, and I just asked him and said, "Dad, would it be possible if I could use this hot air, the heat gun to replace the port?" And he said, "Well, you could try it." And so I did, and that's when the addiction started. That's when I got full-fledged into learning about jailbreaking and repair. All thanks to my dad, just letting me use the heat gun. I was probably 16 at the time. So that was roughly 10 years ago now. Moving forward, I started buying game consoles, and I would buy some that were even broken, like disk drives or messed up or whatever. And I kind of, because I'm a very mechanically inclined kind of person, so I can kind of see something and try to figure it out. And so I would figure out there would be a mechanical failure or a bad laser or whatever, and I would replace it and fix it. And on the PS3, you could remarry a new disk drive with software mods and stuff. Same thing with the Xbox 360. When I got into that and installing mod chips, I've probably done well over 100, 200 mod chips in 360s. And that was about the time I started to get really good at soldering, as I started to teach myself how to solder and solder well. And at that time, I was still using a magnifying glass. And I would say probably about 2019, I met a good friend of mine. His name is Ryan. And Ryan, you're amazing, by the way. I bought a microscope from him, and I found out that he did board level repair. And so he started to kind of teach me a few more things. And I started to learn a little bit of how diodes kind of work, and resistors and how they work, and filters, and so I started to pick up all of these things because it was something I was interested in learning and trying to understand the concept of. Like, I could grab a motherboard. I've got a stack here, just random game console boards, and I could look and I can tell you, okay, that's an inductor, that's a capacitor, this is a IC. I could even look at the board, and not all of the time, but I could look at the board and tell you, okay, that's the south bridge, okay, that's a display chip for the HDMI connector, that's this, that's that, that's a filter. Because all electronics, not all of them are the same, but as you learn, they're all the same, but obviously they're different. But humor me. So I started to really develop a love for it, and I feel like I can take me being homeschooled and becoming obsessed with a topic, or just being obsessed with something, and teaching myself so much about that subject. That's where I am today. And I was obsessed with wanting to fix devices and micro solder and all of that. That was my drive. And this was not something I went to school for. This is purely me, this is what I love. I love soldering. I love it. It's ridiculous. So, and my other passion is YouTube. I love YouTube videos. I love making videos. So that's kind of why I'm pursuing both. But anyway, so I didn't want to make this video really, really long. I don't have any experience going to college and just barely graduating high school and all of that. But all I want to emphasize is the point of, if I would have learned in a more hands-on way, or something I actually enjoyed, school would have been much more enjoyable for me. And thankfully, being homeschooled, I was able to learn on my own in some ways. Obviously, we had some structure growing up too, but I was able to learn on my own and figure things out for myself and figure out what I liked. And I value that. That was my life, and I valued that so much. I'm so thankful that I was able to have that. So, yeah, some people learn very well, just learning through books, and they can apply it. Myself, I can read all about something, but if I'm not doing something hands-on, it takes a lot more to understand and to learn it, for me personally. So, I mean, if you give me something and you kind of explain to me how it works, I can kind of like put it like a physical or just a mental image of how it functions, and then I can just apply it physically. So anyway, so thanks, Alex, for making that video. I just wanted to emphasize it and back that up as much as possible. I feel like they should have more vocational learning in schools than they do. I think that would be awesome. I took automotive class in high school, and what was kind of interesting about that was they actually had a chainsaw and in the class, and I loved two-stroke engines, so I didn't really care. And I didn't have to learn what the rest of the class was doing. I asked the teacher, I was like, is it cool if I tear down this chainsaw and get it running again? And after all of the class tried to work on the chainsaw beforehand, I was the only one that got it running. But anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. But but the reason was because I was obsessed with it and I loved it, and I absorbed all the information about it. Now, at the time in high school, like, there were other kids that would weld and stuff, and I sucked at welding at the time. I do know how to weld now, but anyway. So yeah, if I could emphasize that learning hands-on is, for some people, the best way to learn. Some people, they can read something out of a book and do a test, and that's how they learn. So yeah, that's it for today. I'll see you guys in the next video. If you have any comments, leave it down below. I'll see ya.